Donald Trump's sexist, apparently. And I have not sort of been privy to this. I would actually like to just say two things before I go further into this. I don't want to just say Donald Trump is sexist without hearing from somebody from his organization. So if a John Miller could contact me, I would really appreciate to have a conversation with John about Donald's record with women. And I'd also like to say via full disclosure that I am actually David Brooke, Michael Brooks' body double, because he didn't have time to come in here today because everything is going so great. So I just wanted to do full disclosure. He just didn't have time. I mean, it's true. But there's a new New York Times report on Donald Trump's record with women that sort of runs the gambit from like the really disturbing, like potentially raping his ex-wife, to, you know, the gross and the disgusting, to the just sort of like, yeah, well, right, whatever. What else would you expect from this guy? And the thing about it is so baked into the cake with him now that I don't see how any of these stories hurt him, frankly. I think you would have to produce with his voters. Women already hate him, other than all the women that love him. But for his voters, you would probably need to produce a story of just sort of unimaginable horror and criminality. And frankly, probably it wouldn't bother them either. He's more Berlusconi in his sort of abuses of women, and I don't think that would ever bother his base. And Reince Priebus, or whoever that sad little man from Fargo who runs the Republican National Committee, is starting to get the hang of it. So Chris Wallace asks Priebus about Donald Trump's sexism on Fox News Sunday. And this is how he responded, with his characteristic charisma and good humor.
And I want to start with that article in the New York Times today. It's called Crossing the Line, Trump's Private Conduct with Women. They did more than 50 interviews over 6 weeks, and they say they found repeated instances of Trump insulting women and making unwanted advances, even in the workplace. Chairman Priebus, does that bother you?
Even in the workplace.
Well, you know, a lot of things bother me, Chris, and obviously I'm the wrong person to be asking that particular question. But look, we've been
wait a minute. Why are you the wrong person? I mean, you're the chairman of the party. This is your nominee, and they're saying that he has mistreated women over the years.
What I would say is, you know, we've been working on this primary for over a year, Chris, and I've got to tell you, I think that all these stories that come out, and they come out every couple weeks, people just don't care. I think people look at Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton and say, who's going to bring an earthquake to Washington, D.C.? I think the bigger issue when we make these judgments about people are, you know, whether or not individuals are throwing stones in glass houses. And when people are hypocrites, obviously that's when these stories have an impact. But I don't think Donald Trump and his personal life is something that people are looking at and saying, well, I'm surprised that he's had girlfriends in the past. That's not what people look at Donald Trump for. And so I think the traditional playbook and analysis really don't apply.
But forgive me, it's not whether or not he had girlfriends. The question is whether or not he mistreated women, whether he made unwanted advances, whether he humiliated women in the workplace. I don't understand why you say that people don't care about that. And are you going to look into the allegations?
Well, look, I'm not saying people don't care about it. I'm just saying I think the reason he's where he's at is that he represents something much different than the traditional analysis of individual candidates. And yes, everything bothers me, Chris. But I don't know the truth of these things. I don't know, other than reading an article, whether or not these things are true. I think.
Okay, so I'm going to give an actual serious assessment there because there's strategy in that clip. But first, I'm going to do my impression of Reince Priebus as a character from Fargo. A lot of things bother me, Chris. The Jews, the Puerto Ricans. As an example, I'm not a huge fan of the ladies myself. Although from the opposite perspective, the last time I had a date was in 1988. I had a Chevy Charger. I showed up. I brought pie and flowers, and she's off with some other guy. So I don't frankly even want to hear about it, Chris.
It's a Dodge Charger, Reince.
Dodge Charger. Ah, what the Christ. What do you want from me? I did my best to have him lose the nomination, but all the other guys were dumb and slow and whatnot. John Kasich's out there trying to get the nomination, shoving food in his face, and Jeb Bush barely has any energy. And Scott Walker makes me look like Denzel Washington. I mean, what do you want from me? What the hell? But what they're doing there is, first of all, he's right. Trump's voters totally don't care. There's nothing surprising about that profile, as disgusting as it is. And when he says, talking about glass houses, all of the Republican establishment is on board to relitigate Bill Clinton's sex life, bring up rape charges, bring up sexual assault, and bring up everything else. And that's how they're going to play it. And the whole way they're going to frame it is Donald Trump is up front, and maybe you like it or you don't. Maybe he's a little bit boorish, maybe he's not. But yeah, he dates girls and he does his thing. And now he's actually married to his wife, who supposedly he doesn't cheat on. John Miller, let's talk about it. And Bill Clinton is a serial predator of women. That's the playbook. And I don't know what will work, but it's not their worst play.
Reince is using the playbook of I don't know anything. It was reported to here. Let me play the last couple seconds of that clip.
Much different than the traditional analysis of individual candidates. And yes, everything bothers me, Chris. Everything. But I don't know the truth of these things. I don't know, other than reading an article, whether or not these things are true.
That's their whole program in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's true.